Welcome to the deep dive. You've handed us a stack of sources today that it doesn't just ask us to think. It feels like it gives us a spiritual blueprint.
A blueprint is a good word for it.
Yeah, a really structured two-part path to finding, I guess, clarity and meaning in life.
Yeah.
So we're really looking at an architectural question. What's the right sequence for faith?
That's exactly right. The source material we have, it centers on three specific verses from Sura Az-Zumar, that's 39.53 through 55.
Okay.
And the brilliant insight here is how the verses are read, sequentially. They give you this immense reassurance, almost like a safety net.
Right.
But then, immediately after, they follow it up with this urgent, ordered mandate for the reader. It sets up this incredible tension.
Let's start with that safety net then, because that's a powerful opening. The sources even note it made the original writer feel, quote, happy and deeply reassured. We're talking about 39.53.
That verse is, it's the ultimate unconditional invitation. It reads, "O my servants, who have committed excesses against their own souls, do not despair of God's mercy, for God surely forgives all sins."
Wow.
I mean, if you think about foundational text, that is arguably the most reassuring message possible. It's a guarantee of forgiveness no matter how far you've strayed. It's just a complete emotional release.
And it feels, essential to just sit in that reassurance for a moment.
It really does.
Because what comes next in verses 54 and 55, it's just this complete contrast, this urgency.
Required response.
Exactly, the response to accept that immense grace. The sources pull out this dual instruction tonight. Turn to your Lord and submit to him.
And follow the best aspect of what is sent down to you.
But what gives this whole mandate its teeth is the timing. The instruction is immediately followed by this warning that this has to happen before his scourge overtakes you unawares.
So you go from the greatest comfort imaginable, total forgiveness, to, well, the greatest urgency, imminent accountability.
Which makes the next question absolutely critical. If we have to prepare, where do we start? The research insists on a specific order, and it starts with turning to God.
Yes.
So why is that sequence so crucial, and how do we even begin to define what that first step, turning, even is?
Well, that distinction between turning and submitting is, it's the core of this entire framework. Submission, or Islam, is generally understood, right? It's the physical, intellectual, and moral commitment.
Sure, the actions.
Exactly. But the sources argue that turning is the prerequisite. It's the condition you need first. And it's not a physical act. It's about a complete reorientation of your perspective.
Reorientation.
It's about how you think so that you can actually begin to see God.
Okay, let's unpack that idea.
Yeah.
Reorienting our thinking so we can see. The research gives us some really beautiful, simple analogies to get this concept of turning. It's all about your focal point, isn't it?
It's pure perspective. I mean, think about where you aim your gaze. If you physically turn your body toward a garden, what do you see?
You see the specifics. The colors, the shapes of the flowers, the bees, the soil. Your reality becomes the garden.
And if you turn towards the sea...
You see the vastness, the waves, the horizon. You can only perceive what you're focused on.
Exactly. So by extending that logic, this framework is suggesting that when we do this spiritual turn, we're adjusting our consciousness in the same way. We begin to see his signs around us.
So we're actively choosing a direction of interpretation.
You are. This is the crucial point for the learner in these sources. Turning means you're cultivating an intentional consciousness, one that interprets every single event, big or small, through a specific lens.
It's a shift from seeing what random cause and effect
to seeing intentionality.
Can you give us a practical example of that?
Yeah.
In daily life? Because this is where the abstract concept really has to become tangible.
Okay, so let's say you're facing a major unexpected delay, a missed flight, a business setback.
Yeah, something frustrating.
Without the turn, you see a mechanical failure. The airline messed up, or my competitor got lucky. It's all about human error or random chance.
Okay.
But when you engage the spiritual turn, you recontextualize that same event. Instead of immediate frustration, you start to ask, what am I being protected from by this delay?
Or, how is God using this to steer me somewhere else?
Precisely. It turns a frustrating moment into a learning moment because you're now hearing how God is working behind the scenes, even in the silence.
That is profound. It turns passive experience into active observation. But cause and effect is often explained by science, right?
Of course.
So if we're trying to pivot our mental framework, How do the sources help us ground the spiritual vision in the physical world we live in every day? Is there a test case for this?
They absolutely give us one, and it's a brilliant conceptual move. They use gravity,
Gravity.
the most pervasive fundamental law we experience, and they use it to show that what you see isn't based on the event itself, but on where you've chosen to turn your intellectual eye.
That's the aha moment.
It's the perfect aha moment. It takes the universal reality that things fall and shows how 3 different turnings completely redefine the meaning of that fall.
Okay, let's walk through them. This is where the research really shines. So if we turn toward the earliest scientific view, let's say we turn towards Isaac Newton, what's the story we see when an apple falls?
You see force, a quantifiable pull. It's purely mechanical, something you can measure.
Right.
You see a relationship defined by mass and distance, an equation that describes a force dragging everything downward. It's powerful, but it's entirely impersonal. The world is a clockwork machine.
So that's turning the mechanical view. Now we shift our perspective, like the sources suggest, and we turn toward Einstein. The phenomenon is identical, the apple still falls, but the understanding is completely different.
Yes. When we turn toward Einstein, we move from a force to geometry. You no longer see a pull.
You see the curvature of space-time.
Right. Objects don't pull each other. They're just following the contours of the universe that mass creates. It's elegant, it's complex, but it's still just a geometric law.
The world is now a warped tapestry, but still governed by cold, deterministic rules.
Exactly.
And now comes the critical transition, the one defined by the source material. We take that same physical reality, things fall, and we do the spiritual turn. We turn our consciousness toward God. What happens to the story of the falling object then?
It shifts from mechanism and geometry to intentional care. It's a complete flip.
Intentional care.
The sources say that when you turn to this third view, you see how God is taking care of us through it. Gravity is no longer an indifferent force keeping us from floating away.
Or just a bend in space-time.
Right. It becomes an intentional maintenance system, a sign of ongoing moment-to-moment divine preservation.
That transition from impersonal law to divine intention, that is the practical definition of the first step.
It is. It's the moment you learn to consistently turn your consciousness toward the spiritual interpretation of reality instead of just the scientific or mechanical ones.
And if you fail that first step,
You're left with only the impersonal interpretations. You might understand how the world works, the physics of it all, but you miss the why. You can describe the mechanism perfectly, but you can't find meaning in it.
which brings us, naturally, to the second half of the mandate from Sura Az-Zumar, submission to God, Islam. Once that perspective has shifted, once we've learned how to turn, the sources suggest submission just becomes inevitable.
It becomes the natural desired consequence. If your turning has shown you a universe constantly governed by intentional divine care, if you truly believe the gravity analogy applies to everything,
Your health, your finances.
everything, then the next logical step is wanting to please the source of that care. The new reality you see through the turning generates the desire to get close to God and obey Him.
So submission is a reaction born out of perspective, not just a list of duties to perform. And how do the sources define the quality of this submission? It sounds like it must involve a total letting go of ego and control.
It is about profound trust and release. Submission, in this context, is defined as letting go. It's not us or our expectations anymore.
Okay.
You consciously move away from demanding the world conform to your plans because you trust the bigger plan that your turning has revealed. The research gives a really illustrative analogy for this trust. We accept being a baby taken care of by God like a mother taking care of her baby.
That analogy of the baby and the mother that's powerful. A baby doesn't understand banking or cooking or scheduling,
Not at all.
but it fully trusts the care it's receiving. That level of total trust defines submission here.
Precisely. It is the acknowledgement that you are being looked after by an intelligence and a care far beyond your own comprehension. And that is enough reason to obey and find joy in that relationship.
This brings us to the crucial structural conclusion of the whole framework. We've started with the question of order, and the analysis of these verses insists that the sequence is paramount. Turn first, then submit. So what's the payoff when you get the sequence right?
When the order is correct, when submission follows that intentional perspective shift of turning, that is when we get the clarity. And clarity here means not just understanding the rules, but understanding the meaning and the purpose behind every action, every command, every moment.
And here is the truly profound and maybe challenging conclusion from the sources. The consequence of getting the steps wrong.
Yes.
If people are stuck jumping directly to the second step, performing the acts of submission, but they skip the foundational act of turning, what's the result?
The result is hollowness.
Mm.
The sources suggest this is a widespread spiritual problem. People are in the second step and don't go through the first step of turning to God. They're fulfilling the requirements of the faith, but their interior life is disconnected.
That's a challenging idea.
Yeah.
That we could be doing all the right things, but missing the entire point. If submission is carried out without the turning that comes before it, what does that action actually feel like?
It feels like duty, mere compliance. When that first step is skipped, the actions become empty mechanics. It's the religious equivalent of the Newton view of gravity.
You understand the force, the command.
But you miss the intention and the care behind it. The source material is unequivocal about this. The consequence of that skip is that's why there is no meaning in anything that we do.
So you can pray, fast, give charity.
All of it. But if your perspective hasn't shifted to see divine signs and intentionality in the mundane, those actions become, well, burdensome habits, not expressions of profound love and trust.
Oh, wow. So the clarity, the joy, the meaning, it's all contingent upon the correct sequence. You can't find true purpose in submission unless you first get the perspective right.
Yes. The research effectively concludes. We have to first learn to turn our consciousness to see the intentionality of God and then become Muslims, those who submit.
That's a powerful corrective, then, for spiritual malaise.
I think so. If you feel disconnected or bored or you lack that fervor despite doing all the right things, this framework says go back to step one.
The problem isn't the prayer.
The problem is the lens through which you're seeing the world leading up to that prayer. The meaninglessness comes from trying to submit to an order whose intentionality you haven't yet learned to perceive.
So what does this all mean for someone navigating this path? The challenge isn't about the volume of effort, it's the direction of your consciousness.
It's the active, moment-to-moment cultivation of that new perspective, the turning, before you try to rely only on the structured action of submission.
It's an insistence on perspective over prescription, at least initially.
Exactly. The framework gives you assurance first, then a sequenced two-part mandate to achieve spiritual vibrancy. And the core takeaway, which our sources make inescapable, is that genuine meaning is just absent if that initial perspective shift is skipped.
Absolutely. And as we finish this deep dive, let's leave you with this final thought, building on that profound difference that turning can make, from the gravity example. Think about one seemingly insignificant daily event. Maybe a piece of good news you received, or the specific way your morning commute unfolded, or even just the sunrise you saw this morning.
Reconsider that small event and actively try to view it through the three lenses we discussed. Can you view it through the lens of Newton pure, mechanical cause and effect? Can you see it through the lens of Einstein pure, cosmic geometry, elegant but impersonal?
And now apply that third critical perspective from the sources, the lens of divine care and intention.
Which direction are you habitually turning, and which perspective allows for the most profound meaning in your understanding of the world right now? That is the exploration Sura Az-Zumar and this framework challenge you to begin.
What stands out to you? Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll catch you next time.